So let me go into the mistakes that growing churches will never make with branding. And if you find yourself making these mistakes, quickly change that. And you might just see some difference in the way that churches remember you. Number one, thinking it's just a logo. Okay, your visual branding is not just a logo. We covered this earlier in the show. Just because I have a Bible doesn't mean I'm a Christian. Just because I go to church doesn't mean I'm a Christian. Just because you have a logo doesn't mean you have a brand, okay? So if you're sitting here and you're wondering like, why doesn't anyone recognize my church? We use the same logo everywhere. Well, are you changing the colors of the logo? Are you changing the format of the logo? Does the logo work in large media? Does it work in small media? Is your logo adaptable? Is it responsive? Does it work across? Are you using the same colors? Are you using white as your business card versus black on your shirt versus blue on your tent? All of these different colors mean different things to different people. It's a great example. Actually, I have it. I didn't plan to say this, but I'm drinking right now a Dr. Pepper Zero. You'll notice anytime you see black on a can, it's a zero. Okay, Dr. Pepper Zero, Coke Zero. You're gonna see that black meaning zero, meaning diet. It's the same way Diet Colas, right? They used to all be in silver cans. They still are, right? Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, Diet Dr. Pepper's in a white can. Diet Sprite, all these diet drinks were in silver cans. It was a way to just quickly pitch, hey, this is diet, this is no calories, okay? So if you're concerned about that, or if you're just looking for a diet drink, right? When I go to a restaurant or a gas station, I'm not looking to see what sodas they have, I'm looking to see what diet sodas they have. Those colors catch my eye. So having that consistency every time you present your church, is something that is very important, and growing churches know this. They use the same logo, the same colors, the same messaging. I know this because we do this for these church plants, okay? They utilize, I hit my mic, so I think we're still on. They use these same consistent designs, language, and visual mediums, okay? Don't use a scratchy, avant-garde type of background coloring and then use bright pastel coloring in a different medium. You've got to maintain that consistency because that's what branding is. It's not just a logo, it's maintaining consistency in how you present your church visually through your designs, assets, media, everything like that. Okay, number two mistake that growing churches will never make with branding is they will never not do the research. I should stop using negatives, but hey, we're in the thick of it now, okay? They will never not do the research. Whenever church plants, and let me clarify here, whenever fast-growing, multiplying church plants come across my radar, they've always done the research. They go into a town, and I'm not just talking about the research of the best place to plant. I'm talking about the research of what's the best way to get our message into this community that we're planting. We are here, we are new, we are different, we are worth your attention, and we are worth checking out because you are whatever, okay? Every fast-paced growing church plant has done their research, okay? What are other churches in the area doing? If you're planting a church, you're probably planting a church because there's a group of people that no other church is equipped to serve or reach in that community effectively for the gospel. So you need to do your research. All these other churches, I don't want to sound like them. I don't want to look like them. I don't want to come across as them. I want to come across as almost a new and improved, even though on our side of the door we know that's not the case, but on the other side of the door, that's what we want to come across as, okay? It's a church unlike you've ever seen before. They will do the research, okay? Not only that, they will look inward. What's the pastor's calling? What's the pastor's vision? We want to be a safe refuge church, okay? So there needs to be safety communicated in the visual branding that comes across not just as the colors, but the way you present yourself, the way you talk about yourself, okay? They will look at, do we want to reach young or old? That's going to impact the certain design language choices you make, how big things are, how little things are, how bright things are, how simple and corporate and streamlined things are, just based on who you want to reach. Okay, there's a lot of other research that can go into this. It really goes down into the demographics that comes across. What we talked about last week. We talked about our Be Clear methodology, where we help you clarify your message and how you're going to present yourself. And the visual branding this week that we're talking about, being memorable, reinforces that through the visual medium. So you have to do that research before of who are we. Why are we? Why should someone care? What can they expect when they come with us? What can they expect if they don't join us? And then anchor that into the visual medium. That's what we're talking about when we talk about being memorable using visual branding. Another mistake growing churches will never make is giving ministries their own branding. Okay, you might have heard this from other creators and other Christian influencers say house of brands versus a branded house. Okay, meaning, are you a branded house, which means everything is kind of branded the same? So when you see this color, it doesn't matter if it's kids, adults, mainline, youth, whatever. It's one brand for the entire church versus a house of brands where you've got Impact Kids and Kingdom Youth and Just Older Youth and Outreach Missions Project and Mosaic Fellowship. What does that mean, right? And all of them have their own colors. All of them have their own language. All of them have their own names. And so when Mosaic Fellowship goes out and it's just like, you don't even know what it is, you're like, okay, well, what church are you with? Oh, we're with Third Baptist. Well, how am I supposed to anchor Mosaic with Third Baptist? And then also I see Impact Kids. I'm not going to know that they're with that church. There's inconsistency there. And not only that, on a much more internal level, that breeds inconsistency within the own church. Because I've been in way too many churches where people say, I loved Impact Kids. I didn't care so much for Kingdom Youth, right? Because it's not about the church, it's about the ministry, because the ministry has branded itself into its own silo. And more pastors are waking up to the fact that we have too many ministry silos in the church. One of the easiest ways to just psychologically get out of that kind of thinking is to stop branding them as their own silos. Stop branding them as their own entities, as their own organizations, because you will have people picking and choosing their favorites, and you will have parents dropping their kids off for Impact Kids, but their teenagers they'll take to church because they're not just a fan of Kingdom Youth, right? Because it's a totally different thing. It's a house of brands. It's just a bunch of different things fit into one thing. So instead of one puzzle where all the pieces fit and form a larger picture, it's just throwing puzzle pieces against the wall and seeing what kind of monstrosity comes up. So you'll never see growing churches grow by utilizing their own brand. They will be Impact Church with Impact Kids, Impact Youth, Impact Senior, Impact Missions. Okay, you will have consistency among the ministries and the whatever little organizational units inside of that church will use the same branding. Okay. Now I will say this, there is an exception. You can get away with some limited visual cues that are different from the main church. So for example, one that we did with Mr. Church Marketer when I was working with them was Extraordinary Church. Love that church. We had Extraordinary Church, they had Extraordinary Kids, and the Extraordinary Kids was an offshoot of Extraordinary Church, but just slightly toning the colors a little bit more vibrant for the kids. Obviously, the E stayed the same, the primary logo stayed the same, but if you saw the two, you really knew that they were the same. They were just a little bit different. It's a little bit like, for example, going back to sports, okay? You go to sports, you go to a game like a throwback game, right? They're wearing the old 1940s uniforms, right? It's the same team, it's mostly the same colors. There's just a little bit of a difference in how the brand or the organization is presented, right? So in the same way, that is one little exception. But if you are unsure, if you're not a growing church, if you're stagnant, if you feel like you have a bunch of ministry silos, I'm telling you right now, you are the exception. Or sorry, you are not the exception. You are the rule. You need to stay with the rule and stop siloing off your ministries in the way we refer to them. Bring them all under one umbrella. The last mistake I'm going to talk about today that growing churches never make is copying other brands, okay? A lot of clients that we take on to come on initially thinking that we're just going to copy something that we've done with another church, or they'll tell us we like the school colors, we want to be kind of recognized with the school. You don't want to do that because you're going to be then associated with that other church or other organization, okay? You want to have, now I understand there's only, like in the same way there's only so many musical notes, there's only so many colors, I get it, okay? But you don't want to copy something that's existing that is already on your community's attention, okay? I understand the desire to copy school colors, right? Because it's like, especially if you're in a small town, right? Like my dad's hometown, Harlingen, Texas, white and red, battle red. You've got those red colors. It's the Cardinals. Yeah, it's the town colors. But if a church copies those colors, it's going to be very difficult to discern at a glance visually between the school and the church. That can leave some bait and switch opportunities. That could leave some confusion about whether the church is doing something or the school is doing something. Could be some legal ramifications. I haven't come across that, but that is a possibility. All right. You want to make sure that your brand is unique. Your visual branding is unique. The words you say should be somewhat unique as well, okay, compared to what other churches in your community are using, but also how you're doing it, right? I know a lot of churches too want to come on and say, we're going to do Elevation Orange, right? Elevation Orange, it really worked for them. We're going to do that as well. Well, that could work, but you may want to do some manipulation of that because that might not resonate with your community, or that may clash with another church in your community, and you don't want to be mistaken, especially for another church in your community, because that can leave lots of confusion in your community, and that actually hurts both churches' reputations because there's going to be some confusion there. Okay, so that's something you won't see growing churches do. They will take the time. So let's turn it into a positive. Growing churches understand that branding is more than a logo. It's being consistent and repetitive in the colors, the design language, and the assets that you use. They're doing the research to make sure that their visual assets do not copy or overlap other organizations, churches, and schools in the area. And they recognize that the entire ministry, the entire church has to be branded, and all the individual ministries are more of an accompaniment to that brand, not their own silo. And remember, everything we're talking about here is in reference to our definitive church marketing method. Today, we're specifically talking about how we approach Be Memorable, which again comes down to being memorable. So when people see a church or need a church, they think of yours, okay? Because whenever someone feels that pull of God on their heart, or whenever they're in a desperate situation and they're finally ready to turn to their Creator, they're first going to think of who they know. And if they can't think of anyone or don't know of anyone, they will turn to their friends and family and ask them who they know. And your church needs to be on one of those lips. All right? If it doesn't, our backstop as part of the definitive church marketing method is number 3. If they don't know anyone and their friends and family don't know anyone, or they just don't approach them, they will go to Google. And your church needs to be there on Google. So we focus on your messaging and your branding because that's what people will think of first. You have to get in front of them. And then the backstop is Google. They're not going to go to Google first most of the time. They're going to go to who they know first. All right. So you have to have your memorability. You have to be memorable to stick in the minds of people in your community.